with these guys. We'd already been in Kenya, already been in Uganda, but this was special because we were going into Serengeti National Park and I was going to get to go on safari. So I was so excited and we're going along down the road. All of a sudden we could smell this horrible stink and I'm saying, guys, who did it this time? You know what guys are like. Anyway, as it turned out, we came around a turn, right up at the edge of the road, there was a river came right up, and it was full of hippos. Well, I was so excited because I'd never seen a hippo before, and I had not imagined I'd ever seen any that close. So there were about 20 hippos. All you could see was the top of their back and, you know, the top of their head and their beady little eyes. Well, after I caught my breath from the smell and was able to breathe again, I was taking pictures and just enjoying, thanking God for this beautiful encounter. Then our guide who was in the car began to tell us about the characteristics and habits of hippos. You know, it was very interesting. I didn't know it, but hippos don't have pigmentation, so they stay in the water during the day to protect themselves from the sun. They also stay in the water to keep cool, to keep out of the heat. And you know what? They huddle together to look out for one another. Every now and again they'll take a dive under and they can actually stay submerged for long periods of time. But you know what? They stay in that water all day because they're afraid of what lies out on the plains for them. They're afraid of their enemy out on the plains. As he was talking and telling those characteristics, something was stirring up inside me, that excitement of being on safari and seeing these wild animals. Ooh, began to show something. And I began to see patterns of my own life in what he was talking about, you know, the holy huddle. All of these things. He was talking about a comfort zone and a familiar zone, about them, they're mired in their own mess, you know, because they don't get out of water, that's what the stink was. They're in their own dirt. Oh. Then it hit me. I am a hippo. Well, you're probably wondering why I thought I was a hippo and what I was even doing in Africa at that time. So, let me take you to the beginning of the journey. I was born in a very remote village in Canada. I was one of 7 daughters. And the way my grandfather lived with us when I was young, and the way I was raised is that little girls were to be seen and not heard. Girls couldn't speak unless they were spoken to. Many times in my life I felt like I was a puppet because I responded according to what other people expected. I was always very well-mannered, but as I grew up I began to get more and more into trouble. My sisters were always good. They were quiet, they were obedient, but I began to be questioning everything. I was always very curious. My mother would say to me, "You're so stubborn." And I hated that. I hated that she always called me a stubborn. But I would later find out that another word for stubborn is determined. Much more positive, isn't it? Yeah. But you know what? I knew I was different than my sisters. I knew I was different than my mother. And because of that, I often clashed. So I tended to always be scolded and be reprimanded. But I had something in me that was always seeking and searching for something more, something bigger, something better. I guess I like adventures, you can tell by the hippo. By the time I got into junior high, when I was 15 years old, I moved to a different school. Everybody was bussed in from many communities. And And I met this boy there. He was so cute. We immediately fell in love. I was only 15. We got married, I was 17. I was a child bride because in Canada, it's not legal to get married until you're 18. My parents reluctantly signed for us to get married. They made things difficult because I was pregnant. They weren't happy. My mother never ever let me forget how much shame that I brought on the family. But not long after we were married, my husband and I were invited to a Pentecostal church. And that day, during an altar call, we both looked forward together and gave our lives to the Lord. I grew up in a United Church, so my mother was not happy that I was now Pentecostal. Because she didn't believe that what we were doing was sincere, and she didn't understand why we left the family religion. So I had a lot of things going on at that time. We had 3 children right away. By the time I was 21, I'd had our 3rd child. By the time I was 23, Bill and I started our first business. One of the things that attracted me about him is that I saw that he was different from all the other boys. So here's 2 very different people. But what I've discovered is we were both entrepreneurs. I saw that spirit in him, and that's why I knew that we were meant to be together. And you know, Bill and I were very happily married for a long time. He always told a joke. Yeah, we were happily married. No, he said, we were married 30 years, happily 20. You know, there's no... Of course, that was always a joke. But we were married for 35 years. But in those years, we had, when we started that first business, we ended up starting a few and selling, and we actually became very successful within 10 years. We weren't yet 30 years old, and we began franchising our business opportunity. And with building the business, Bill and I did a lot of traveling. When we would travel, by this time my father had passed away, so my mom would come and stay at our house and babysit our children. And a lot of those days were a lot of very hard work. I sacrificed a lot to be able to build our business. Sometimes I look back now with regret. But the biggest thing that I dealt with in those days was the guilt of leaving my children, especially with my mother, who... Sometimes I didn't think my kids measured up to my mother's expectation, as I hadn't either, because my children are a lot like me. But you know what? Those were also years, even though Bill and I were traveling a lot and building the business, I call them the lean years. Although we were financially successful, we were not following the Lord the way we should have been. We got too distracted by worldly things, and we're traveling and enjoying it. One day the pastor at our church, he had borrowed our video camera to go on a missions trip to the Philippines. So when he came back, he called Bill and he said, I can't figure out how to download this video and put it on my VHS tape. Can you come and help? So Bill and I went to our pastor's house that day. And in so doing that, we watched the video of their trip to the Philippines. And on his couch that day at our pastor's home, Bill and I received our call to missions. Our life changed completely. Among other things that were happening at the time in our life, we decided that we needed to get right with the Lord, get back on track, and just devote ourselves to doing what we could do. And as business people and as entrepreneurs, that's exactly what we did. Is we started traveling with a focus on using our skills and our financial ability as well to help other people in different parts of the world. We enjoyed it so much, and our success continued. Our oldest son stayed in our business. His name is Danny. He was his father's shadow. He loved the company. Our 2 other children worked in the company, put themselves through school. Our youngest son, Jason, became a pastor, and our daughter became an engineer. So they went off and did their own careers. But Danny stuck with it. And during our absence, as our children grew, Danny ran our business while Bill and I were away. Also during that period, once we turned our focus back on the Lord, Bill became an elder also at City Heights Church. He served as elder for a long time. Many people would think that we had the world by the tail. Until Bill started falling down. Then he was having difficulty breathing. And at first we thought, oh, you're just getting old. But as it turned out, Bill had 2 terminal illnesses. He was diagnosed with ALS, which is a disease. It's a horrible disease which makes you become completely paralyzed. The life expectancy is from 2 years to 15. Most die within 2 years. With that diagnosis, Bill never accepted that. He never believed that he was going to die. He never lost faith. Our home became filled with our Christian brothers and sisters coming and praying, laying on hands. As Bill became more and more paralyzed, he would lose the use of one hand, and then the arm, and then this leg, and then eventually he couldn't even hold up his own head. We had to put a brace on his neck. He lost the ability to breathe on his own, and he was on a machine to breathe for him for 17 months. So just taking care of him was a lot of work. Just to move him out of a hospital bed that was in our bedroom, put him in the wheelchair. I had to put a harness on him and lift him with like a jack and move him and put him in the chair. And I had to hire a nurse to help me care for him. My son, who was the pastor, he and his family moved in with us for a while just to help with the care. Bill was a big man, so I couldn't lift 200-pound man. So it took a lot of physical strength, emotional strength, spiritual strength, all in this while we were still trying to run our businesses. One of the amazing things that was happening at that time is that our church family, at that time was about 300 people that attended our church. We had just gotten a new pastor. He came in from the United States, and the reason we had hired him was because we thought we needed, our church had grown very complacent, and we needed a pastor to really bring in a new infusion of the Holy Spirit. Part of what his vision for our church was, we had also hired or brought in a man who was a well-known prophet at the time. And they kept holding revival meetings at our church. And I would be able to get Bill, we had a van that we could take him in a wheelchair or whatever, to all these revival services. And this prophet would prophesy for hours and hours on end. And he would lay his hands on Bill and prophesy, "Thus saith the Lord, thus saith the Lord," that Bill was going to do this, Bill was going to do that, he was going to be in China, he could see him doing all these wonderful things. They kept standing Bill on his feet and holding him up. Have faith to walk, have faith to walk. This is how I spent almost 2 years. Just believing and believing and believing. And you know what? When you're desperate and every day when you see him losing one more thing and becoming completely unable to even move his face, I had to suction his saliva because he couldn't even swallow. And and he would drool. So I had a machine to suction his saliva. I had another one to clean his nose. So everywhere we went, I had to have all these machines, and I had to be making sure that the batteries were charged for them. And it was a lot to do to keep him alive. But it wasn't just keeping him alive physically. It was keeping him alive spiritually. Bill had gotten a fever, and I had to call an ambulance to take him to the hospital because he was beginning to have convulsions. All during this time, I was afraid he was going to die and I wouldn't be able to revive him, and I couldn't imagine the thought of me living with the guilt of it being my fault. But we got Bill to the hospital, and he was in intensive care unit for 16 days. And when we got him there, the doctor said, why isn't he already dead? He had no circulation in his arms and legs. He couldn't move anything except for his eyes and his lips. That suction machine, luckily he had a hole in no tooth here because I could go at it that way. But for 16 days, Bill never gave up. His room was filled full of people praying and laying on hands and believing in the prophecies, believing in healing, believing and believing. Somebody had to sit with Bill all the time and look at him because he couldn't make any sound. So when he needed something, I could generally tell by the look in his eyes what he needed by this time. You know how like a mother, you know what your child wants, even though when they're a year old they can't speak, but you get to know what they need, you know the routine and whatever. That's how it became. Bill wouldn't let me out of his sight because he saw me as his lifeline, because he knew that I would understand what he needed physically. But on this one morning, so our children took turns sitting with him all night long so that I could sleep in the chair. And for 16 days, I slept in a chair at the foot of his bed in case he needed something. But on this last night, or I didn't know it would be his last night, the lady who had been the nurse that I'd hired became very close, and she was a wonderful Christian woman. She had come in to visit him, and she said, you know what, how about if I stay and spend the night and sit with Bill? So your 3 children who had been taking turns, they were tired, and they had their own families. I'll take a turn and I'll sit with Bill. So Colleen sat with Bill all night. When he woke up in the morning, he didn't usually sleep very, very much. He was awake and asleep, awake and asleep. So early in the morning, she convinced him to let us bathe him, because for the last week, he didn't want anybody to touch him. He was in so much pain. But he relented, and Pauline and I bathed him and made him comfortable, and covered him with warm blankets because he was so cold. And then she left. So when she left, I went and got our devotional because I used to sit beside his bed, and in the morning I would read to him and I would sing to him. From his window I could see her leaving, go through she paid the toll to get out of the parking lot. And when Bill wanted to try to communicate, he would make the smacking with his lips, just like that. And we had a bag, I don't know if you know what an ambu bag is, but it's an air bag with a hose. I would put the mouthpiece in, and I would give him more air, and with that extra air in his lungs, when it exhaled, he could blubber a little bit. And I would try to make out what he was saying. So he did, and I got the bag, and I gave him some air, and he said, "They're here. They're here." And I said, "Angels?" Because I knew they were. And he nodded, or he did his eyes, yes. And then, so I gave him more air. And he said, "I am ready." say it like that, but I'm ready. Thank you. And then he closed his eyes, and his spirit left his body. Well, I tell everybody I think I went halfway to heaven because it took God that long to rip our hearts apart. Because we had been in love for so long. And this was something that I hadn't expected or anticipated because I never believed he was going to die. It actually was a very beautiful experience. It wasn't like how I had feared. I feared he'd be struggling and that I would be trying to revive him and resuscitate him. I thought I'd be putting blood or oxygen, air into his lungs to keep him alive for as long as I possibly could. But why did I not? I had such peace. I had such peace. And it was so beautiful because I know exactly where he was. How could I deny him? After everything he'd gone through. In that little time alone before I called my children. Probably those have been the most peaceful moments of my life for the next 3 years. Because what happened next almost destroyed me. Almost killed me. When my children came that day, my children are now 40 years old, 38 years old, and 37 years old, and I have 11 grandchildren. So I have a large family. So they all came to the hospital, and actually it was a very beautiful experience. When we left there, I stopped and I signed documents by a van that we had made arrangements for and were already using. But they needed a signature on the payment. That was my first signature as president of the company. Because now I had inherited a position that I had never applied for, nor did I want. But I became president of our business system. When I left there, I went to the church. And I knelt on the altar, and I spent an hour there. By the time I got home, my house was full of people. But most people were in disbelief. Most people couldn't believe what had happened. Many people were angry. They were angry because the prophecy didn't come true. They were angry because what this man of God who said, "Thus saith the Lord, Bill, you will walk. Bill, you will go to China. Bill, you will do this." It was all gone. They were devastated. They didn't know how to handle that. It was a challenge, but here I'm a widow. They should have been comforting me. But instead they accused me. Why did Bill die? That was the question. Colleen, what happened? Why did Bill die? He must have had unforgiveness in his heart. You must have not done this. Well, 3 days later we had the funeral, and it was a large funeral. 500 people were there. My son, who was the youth pastor at that church at the time, actually spoke at the funeral and did a very beautiful service for his father. But our senior pastor came forward and he said, "There are a lot of people here today wondering what happened and why did Bill die." See, our whole church had built for 2 years. Our faith was standing on the prophecy that Bill was going to get out of that wheelchair. That we were going to have painted on our motorhome a picture of Bill being healed from the wheelchair to walking. This is the prophecy that was over. That was all gone. There was no hope. So at Bill's funeral, our pastor came forward and he said, many of you don't understand what happened, but he said, I want you to know that prophecy is not infallible. Half the people got up and left. Our church split within the next year. Many of those people that left actually never even went to another church, and they still don't. They've completely lost faith. My heart grieves for them. And I pray that they will be touched and drawn back. Another group of people have left and they formed a new church. They still, for a while, that prophet actually went underground because there were a lot of people wanting to kill him. But you know what? He eventually came out of hiding and he called me and he apologized. In the ensuing months, looking after the business presented challenges because our business was a male-dominated business, was construction. So I worked every day with men. I'm accustomed to working with men. I like working with men. I knew all our employees and our staff. We franchised our business, so we had many locations. I knew all of them and their families. I knew their birthdays. I was the relational person in our company. That was what I loved to do. It wasn't my job, but it's what I loved to do. But you know what? When I changed offices and moved into Bill's, that was a real hard thing to do, to open that door that had been locked for 2 years, turn on the light and go in and sit down at his desk. His files are there, his handwriting is there. You never get away from trying to fill Bill's boots. Do you have that saying here? In Canada, when you have to try to live up to somebody else, we say you're trying to fill their boots. For 2 years, I tried to fill Bill's boots. Because no matter what decision came up, it's like, what would Bill do? What would Bill do? What would Bill do? So somebody gave me a book called God is My CEO. And I kept that on my desk. And I began to change. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? But in this time, there were a lot of people that thought I only had the job because I was a wife. They didn't realize that I went to work every day for 30 years and had an office. I was one of the co-founders, so I knew everything about the company and was certainly the most qualified to take over. And I can honestly tell you, in that 2-year period, from our living room when Bill was sick, that was my training ground because he still continued as head of the company. With my help, when he couldn't speak, I became his voice. We made many phone calls and we held many business meetings in our living room. Also, because Bill was an elder of the church and they wanted to keep him involved, every elders meeting for 2 years was in my living room. Because I had to tend to Bill, I was in every elders meeting for 2 years. I took that very seriously and honored that role as being very quiet and keeping knowledge that I had very confidential. But it sure taught me a lot. So you see, here I was struggling. I had a hole in my heart from losing the love of my life. I had a hole in my business from losing the key person, my partner. Taking your son as your partner is a whole different ballgame. And I lost my church family. So in my life, every area, I had suffered major loss. My life was not the same, no matter which way I turned. And people would say to me, I'm so sorry about what happened to your husband. I'm so sorry that you lost your husband. And I said, well, he's not lost, because I know where he is. I'm the one who's lost. Because I didn't know where to go and what to do. You see what was happening? Everybody has good advice. My accountant would give me good advice. My friends would give me advice. Blah, 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 blah. Everybody was trying to give me good advice. But you know what? They didn't really know me and what my needs were. They didn't know the plan God had for me. In those deep, dark moments, and I can tell you that year 2 after Bill died was the worst year of my life. Because in the first year, you're in a fog. I don't know if any of you have lost a spouse or anyone very close to you, but I just describe it as like being swimming when you're underwater. You know, you can hear sounds, but they're muffled. You can see, but it's distorted. You're in it and around people, but you're really not connected. So I had a hard time concentrating. So I had to just pour over everything I did and just to try to get it to stick. I had a hard time reading my Bible because I just couldn't concentrate. But you know what? Over years and years of studying God's Word, years and years of praising God, the Holy Spirit does bring. I would work long hours, and after everybody left at 5 o'clock, I'd be there at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, mainly because I dreaded the drive home. I hated going home to an empty house. But once I got there, I'd cry every night all the way home. Once I got there, unlocked the door and went in, I was okay. But inside me, there was a battle going on. So it was a battle for my mind. I began to feel guilty about everything. I relived every wrong I had ever done because I thought there must be something that I'd done that caused Bill to die. Because I would meet people, and one lady in the grocery store, I'm buying groceries, and she came up to me and said, "What do you suppose it really was? Why did Bill die? What did you do? Or what did he do? Like, do you know that?" It's like, well, if I knew it, I probably would have tried to fix it. Well, he was still here. But people can say really mean things, and you know what? They're very well-intentioned. Because she was a friend, but she had no idea how she hurt me with her words. Do you know that since the day Bill died, all those people that have been at my house praying every day, trying to stand him on his feet to walk in faith, you know, walk into your prophecy, Bill. Walk into your prophecy, Bill. You know what? No one ever came. To this day, my pastor hasn't been to my house. What happened is some people have put me on a pedestal. Because a lot of people would look and say, "Colleen, you're a very successful woman. You have a successful business. Your husband had a wonderful position in the church. I was leader over a women's ministry." They had an expectation of me and what they thought I should be doing and how I should be living. And I began to wear a mask, to hide all my feelings, so that I could live up to the false perception of what they thought I should be doing. That's why year 2 was terrible. Because I wasn't really living, I was living for other people. Other than people coming up and saying, "Oh, Bill would be so proud of you, you're doing such a good job." Or Bill would be so proud of you for this. And frankly, I got tired of being measured against Bill. It's like, he's gone. I'm here, but nobody seems to care because nobody comes and prays for me. Nobody has helped me do anything other than my sisters and my children. Where did they all go? Many of them couldn't face me. Many of them couldn't talk to me. But yet I was left alone. You see the holy huddle? I wasn't included in that holy huddle anymore. Because I didn't fit. I challenged their thinking and I challenged their beliefs. I represented something. See, they thought they lost their church. I lost much more than that, but I really didn't. But I didn't know it then. I didn't know it. But I went through 3 years trying to figure out who Colleen was and not being true to myself. I became very tormented by all these thoughts of what people were telling me to do, what I thought I should do, what I felt obligated to do, what I felt guilty for, which is all false. But I was trying to live a life that was completely built on lies. You see the lies that the enemy planted. Why did I not know better? Because you know what? I taught spiritual warfare. I knew about wearing the full armor of God. I knew all this. But you know what? People kept saying, you're so strong. You're so strong. In my flesh, there's the key word. In my flesh, I tried to be strong. I tried to be the good wife and carry on Bill's legacy. I thought I owed it to him. See what crazy thinking? So, I was buying into all those lies because I was sinking deeper and deeper, deeper into depression. But yet there was something inside me. And at that time I was thinking, I've got this void because, I've got a new partner in my company. My son is now my partner. I miss Bill. I always tied it into missing Bill. Missed Bill. What would Bill do? I'm still thinking. I had nobody to talk to, nobody to pray with me. And I felt I'd lost my covering because my husband, like we learned yesterday afternoon, what is a husband's role? He's protector, provider, a priest. See, I lost my husband and I lost that covering. And I lost my church family, those elders that I was in meetings with every day for 2 years. I lost their covering. I felt very alone. I felt like I was abandoned, rejected. What else? I don't know, it was a whole gamut of feelings I had. Now my son, who was the pastor, was my spiritual leader, and you know what? I'm his mother, and it's sometimes really hard for a mother to submit to your son being a pastor. But thank God for Jason. And he would warn me, and he'd say, Mom, don't become bitter, become better. Don't become bitter, become better. So one day, I went to a conference called Jesus to the Nations. It's a missions conference where all the different missions organizations go and they set up a trade fair. We go and listen to all the inspiring speakers. Bill and I had gone every year. But you see, when Bill died, I thought my call to missions died. Because I didn't think a single woman does things like that. I didn't think a woman could travel. More lives, you see. My ego, by this time, well, I shouldn't say my ego. My self-confidence was very low. But my ego was, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show them. That's why I was strong. Same as my mother. When my mother would say things to me, it's like, I'm going to show her. That's why I was determined not to hurt. Because I wanted to prove her wrong. And I really took over wanting to prove a lot of people wrong. But the day I went to that missions fest, I didn't want to go because I knew that there were going to be people there that I had traveled with to different countries we built who hadn't heard what happened. And I just couldn't bear it all day long to tell people what had happened. Because for 2.5 years, I was still telling people. I would run into people and they didn't know, oh, how's Bill? And I'd have to tell them. Then I would be comforting them because they had just heard the bad news that they lost somebody, a friend. But when I went to that missions fest, that day was the beginning of the birth of holding Colleen. This ring I wear used to be on the other hand. This was my wedding ring. And I wrestled with God that day. I was a 45-minute drive to get to the event. And I knew I needed to go. I knew God wanted me to go. But I was afraid of what I would have to face. And I didn't want to cry, because I cried and I have to. So I was late leaving the house, and as I'm driving along and we're going across, there's a big bridge to get to the other side of the harbor. And as I was going across that bridge, praying, God, give me strength. God, give me a vision for my future. Because I was lost. By this time, I'd lost my passion for a company. See, in the beginning, I wanted to get in there because I needed to prove that as the president, as a woman, I can do it. Well, I did that. But you know what? I lost my passion because it wasn't the same anymore. But those holes that I thought I had in my heart weren't really holes. That was the Holy Spirit creating that hunger and emptiness, that need to fill something. That's what was calling me that day. And as I went across that bridge, a voice, and I will say it was the Holy Spirit or God or whoever spoke to me, and said, take your ring off, put it on the other hand. As I did that, and you know what? He had already been dead for 2.5 years. It never dawned on me to take off my wedding ring. Because my mother was a widow for 34 years and she wore hers until it broke. Even though I made a vow till death us do part, I was still Bill's wife. And I always wanted to be his wife. But now I had taken that ring off and put it over here. Why didn't God tell me to put it in my purse or in my pocket? I don't know. I found out later, and I'll tell you that story tomorrow. All I know is that when I crossed that bridge, that empty spot, you know, when you've had a ring on your finger for a long time, you get a big hole there where the ring was. All I could do is, you know, all day long when I'm at the Missions Fest, I'm fooling with that spot. There's an empty spot there. That spot needs something. And it had had a ring on that finger now for so many years, 37, 38 years. But I met a man from an organization who was leading a mission team to Africa. And I talked to him for an hour or so. He told me all about this trip. And as he's talking, this is building up and building up. Oh, you know what? I gotta back up. I want to tell you a little story. When I got to that Missions Fest, the keynote speaker, I was late because I wrestled with God the whole way and was delayed getting there. When I got there, the keynote speaker was just finishing. The doors of the auditorium opened up. The first person who came out was my pastor, who I hadn't seen. I came face to face with him. And he said, Colleen, I'm glad to see you. I've been here all day, and I've been around to all these booths. And guess what? I talked to Alan Vincent of the Slavic Gospel Association. You and Bill have been to Russia with him. And I told him all about what happened to Bill. And then he said, then I talked to so-and-so and told him all about Bill. Then I talked to so-and-so. God had gone before me. He answered my prayer through a man that I lost faith in and lost trust in. But God still used him. And God had mercy on me that day that I didn't have to repeat the story. The fear that I had and the reason I didn't want to go, God had gone and provided. So by now I'm at this booth, and as this man is telling me about this trip to Africa, okay, I'm getting excited. I knew before I left that day I was going to sign up and go. It's like I didn't know how I was going to tell my family. So I went home and I told my mom, I forbid my sisters to tell my mother because I knew my mother would have a lot to say about it. When I told my oldest son, he forbid me to go. He said, you're irresponsible, Mom. You have a responsibility to the company. You have all these people depending upon you. You'll get over there and you'll get killed or you'll get sick or you'll get robbed, or like, all he could see was the negative, the bad. And he said, we need you here. I went anyway. I went to my other son, who was the pastor. He said, well, Mom, I understand your heart for wanting to go, but I'm really thinking that you're still grieving too much. I don't think you've healed enough. I'm worried about you. I think you have a death wish. You shouldn't go. You're not ready yet. But I went anyway. And I remember saying to many people along the way who said, don't go, don't go. And I said, I'm going anyway. I don't understand why I knew it, but I knew that if I didn't go, I was going to die. And I had no idea why God called me there. But you know, remember the women on Easter morning going to the tomb? They didn't know. They knew there was a big stone in the way. But their job was to prepare the body. I prepared my husband's body in the morning he died. That was probably the last gift I gave him. But you know, when I went, and I'm thinking about these women going to the tomb, they were prepared. They were ready. They knew what their calling was. It wasn't their calling to remove the stone. They even talked about it themselves as they walked along the way. That's what it says in the Bible. It's like, you know what? It's not up to me to remove the stones. It's up to me. I am prepared. I know what God has called me to do. I went anyway. That changed my life. It led me to that hippo pool. When I got to Africa, I was not prepared for what I saw. I've been to a lot of slums in Central America, South America. But when I went to Kibera, the first morning, first of all, it took all my strength to be able to keep composed. I was wearing sunglasses and trying not to, blow my nose because I was so upset by what I saw. And I'm thinking, God, this isn't right. Why do people live like this? These are human beings. I had never seen human beings live like that before. Then when we went from there, we went to an AIDS hospice. You know what? I didn't even realize it, but we went in and the women were all, what they were doing is teaching the women how to prepare nutritious meals for their families, how to, all about the antiretroviral drugs. Like, that was all new to me because I really knew nothing about AIDS. And then when I found out that in every single person there was HIV positive, including the children, I was devastated. See, I knew what it felt like to have my husband diagnosed with 2 terminal illnesses. I knew what that felt like, but here these women, they were joyful. They were there singing as they're chopping up vegetables and whatever. But that's the power of God in their lives when they had people pouring into them. That really shook me, and it really made me start to see my life differently. Start to see that what I had experienced really wasn't as bad as what these people were experiencing. Then we went to a hospital. The day we were there, it was a pretty tough day at the hospital because when we got there, there had just been a woman and her baby had just died. And then when they began, we had a doctor on our team who was with us. So he asked a lot of questions, and I'm sort of not even wanting to hear it. But then the midwife was telling us all the statistics of how many women died, how many babies died. I was startled. You see, I told you I had 11 grandchildren. 5 of my 11 grandchildren were high-risk pregnancies and were born by C-section. Had my family lived in that village, they would all be dead. My family would look very different than it does right now. But you see, that's how God, my heart was already tender, it was already hurting, already where I was. But I could see the need. I could see these women who needed better care. It was like, God, why are you showing me this? Why are you showing me this? What am I supposed to do about this? Well, you see, that determined person, the entrepreneur, the fixer, that part of me is like, well, what can I do about this? What can one person do? I just felt very defeated. Very sad. You see, I was taking on all of that. What was wrong? Because that's where I was too. Until we pulled into a beautiful place. Tsavo National Park. I don't know if any of you heard of it in Kenya. But you know what? On that trip to Africa, I was the only woman with 9 men for 32 days. So we had fundraised, we had bought 3 Land Rovers, had them shipped into Mombasa, so we flew in there and picked them up. And the whole idea is we were going to drive through Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, and to Lubumbashi, and we were donating. So while we were there, we were visiting all of the ministries of this organization I was with. So we visited, I think it was 15 different sites, churches, orphanages, schools, hospitals. And then we were going to donate them to the missionaries in Lubumbashi. One was to be used as an ambulance for the hospital that we just raised money to build, and for the teachers and whatever. But in the meantime, we were having an adventure in those vehicles. But as the only woman everywhere we went, I got my own room. The guys mostly slept in a dormitory or when we stayed in a lodge. But that particular day, they put me in the honeymoon suite. And it was a beautiful, beautiful room. It was very large and spacious. It had a king-size bed with a big canopy over it, and it had marble bathroom with a big jacuzzi in it. It was like, oh boy, this is really pretty fancy. I was pretty happy about that. Finally, had a good day. We went out and we did some safari that afternoon and evening. I came back. Before I went to bed, I was sitting in the chair looking out the window over the Serengeti, and here was, reading my Bible. I began questioning God. Like, why am I really here? You know what? I'm already tired. I've been here and I've seen horrible things. If this is just the beginning and I still have a few more weeks to go, my heart can't take any more of this stuff. I can't see this kind of suffering. I've already suffered enough in my own life. Why am I looking at everybody else's suffering too? I went to bed and I fell asleep. And I woke up at about 4:30 in the morning. It was so hot. If any of you know anything about grief, the night is always the worst. If you're ever sick, you're always sickest at night. I was very lonely, definitely missing my husband, wanting to go home because I didn't feel like I fit in. Everything was different. I didn't know the language, I didn't know the money, I didn't know the customs, the food was all different. It's like, I'm not cut out for God. I think when we get back to Nairobi, I'm just going to fly out of here and go home. This is a foolish mistake. My son was right. He said I was out of my mind. He's right. I'm going back home. Then I started to get angry and I got out of bed because I looked at the big, beautiful sign that said honeymoon suite. It was like, God, why did you put me here? What a mean trick to play on me. Put me in the honeymoon suite when you know how broken-hearted I am. You know how much I've lost. Why would you put me in a honeymoon suite? That's the first time I ever had shown any kind of anger. I was mad. Why did you leave me stuck here? You took him, but you left me stuck here in this mess. I don't even want to live anymore. I just want to go home. And honestly, the home I wanted to go to wasn't my home in Canada. I wanted to go home with my husband. And all that stomping and rage around the room, I ended up on the floor, flat on my face on the floor. Colleen had come to the end. Colleen couldn't be strong in the flesh anymore. Colleen couldn't carry the weight of that mask of living up to everybody else's expectations. Colleen couldn't carry that bitterness and unforgiveness of all these people who had stabbed her in the back and betrayed her and were supposed to be there for her and weren't. But on that floor, I was just crying out to God, you've got to help me, I can't do this on my own. See, that's not words that usually came out of me because as the leader, I have to do it. But I can't do it on my own. Then I began to sing a song that in all the days that I couldn't read my Bible, but I had such a longing in my spirit. It's probably, I don't know if you know the song, and I can't sing for beans, but it's called The Power of Your Love. Hold me close, let your love surround me, bring me near, and draw me to your side. As I wait, I'll rise up like thee, Lord. I will soar with you, your spirit leads me on, in the power of your love. I sang that song day and night for years, and that's what came out of me on that floor. That's when God, true to His word, lifted me out of the miry pit that I'd allowed myself to stay in. That comfort zone, because I was familiar with everybody and everything around me, but I didn't want to get out of it because of fear, because of anger, because of all these other things that were keeping me stuck down in that. As I got up off the floor, I can't even put into words what happened to me, other than I know the Holy Spirit came into that room, and it wasn't long, and I was doing the wedding dance around. I was in the honeymoon suite with God. The Holy Spirit came and refreshed and revived and renewed, birthed a whole new Colleen, birthed a whole new vision, birthed a whole new life, birthed a whole new person. All of that was left behind. Everything else. I felt free, I felt light, and I was soaring. I'll continue the rest of the story tomorrow.